All right, hello everybody, and welcome to um, the Search Engine Land Awards discussion for the Best Local Search Marketing Initiative, SEM and SEO. And I'm very, very excited today to be interviewing the winners, Julie Chang from Horizon Media, and Will Plain and Michael Carini from Last Mile Retail. And we're going to hear about their award-winning entries and talk about local search marketing in just a minute. But first, I want to tell everybody that we are very grateful to award sponsor Microsoft for helping us with this process, with these awards. And we're going to talk through the particulars of these campaigns. And I want to just let everybody know that there were, multiple entries in each category. These were very, very competitive awards categories. And so these winners should be very proud of their work. So before we get into the particulars, why don't you guys just introduce yourselves real quickly? Julie, why don't we start with you? Who are you, and tell us a little bit about Horizon Media.
Hi, I'm Julie Chang. I'm a group director at Horizon Media. And Horizon Media, honestly, we're very, very focused on how can we best market for our clients, but also merge with, transformative technology. So that is a huge part of our business ecosystem and how we're able to best drive our clients' business growth forward.
Okay, excellent. And Michael and Will, welcome. Tell us a little bit about who you are and your company, Last Mile Retail, what it does.
Sure. Thanks, Greg, and excited to be here. I'm Michael Carini. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Last Mile Retail. Last Mile Retail is essentially a software technology company dedicated to giving retailers the digital tools that they need to, move their retail marketing online as consumer behavior shifts. So we've created kind of a holistic platform that helps retailers manage everything from their data to their, SEO and SEM kind of marketing. And yeah.
Will, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Mike did a great job. We're kind of a product company around the digital shift that large enterprises and down are seeing.
Yeah, and that's especially true right now with coronavirus. When the year started, and we're almost at the end of 2020, when the year started, everybody had a very different strategy than they do today. And Julie's going to talk about that in particular, and how her agency and her client had to adapt to the very radically different situation that they confronted. So Julie, why don't you take us through your entry a little bit? Tell us who the client was, the category, and then the problems you were dealing with, how you solved it, and what the outcome was. And then we'll get into a more detailed discussion later.
Yeah, absolutely. So our client is a leader in the car rental industry. Obviously, this was a really, really tough market for us. Searches, traffic to site, everything was just down. And so historically, March through August, when we're looking at these months, it's prime time for car rentals. So the main challenge for us was really, how are we going to fight that drop in demand? And how are we going to preserve and restore the business to the best of our ability? And, in terms of our approach here, it's fairly straightforward. One of the first questions that we asked ourselves is, how do we get to that first mover advantage? Meaning, in the absence of all these expected opportunities that, we were anticipating for this year, obviously things turned sideways. But in the absence of those opportunities, there are always going to be new opportunities. So how do we get there first, and how do we pick up a disproportionate share of the market, get people to click through to our site or our client's site without having to spend more? So that was a key focus of ours. Ultimately, because we knew how business was and how the industry was doing, we knew that we were going to have to do more with less.
And I should have mentioned that this was the best local search marketing campaign, so PPC. So Michael and Will, why don't you take us through your entry for best local SEO campaign? Tell us a little bit about the client and the challenges that you were dealing with, and how you solved them, and what the outcome was.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually worked with Sprint, pre-T-Mobile merger, And the challenge for Sprint is that they knew that the vast majority of their sales were kind of occurring in store, but they knew that those customers were first doing quite a bit of research online. And what they wanted to do is kind of two things, right? First is they wanted to really reach customers at that moment of decision making and make sure that Sprint was in consideration and that it was easy to buy from their local stores. And the second thing is they really wanted to understand better the in-store impact of their online marketing and online presence.
Okay, all right, and obviously it was these were both very successful campaigns because you wouldn't be the winners if that weren't the case. But let's get into with you and Will, Michael. Let's get into some more detail on this, and then we'll come back to Julie. So tell us a little bit about there was a point at which you guys were not working for Sprint. You were not in place. Sprint had a different solution. Tell us what that was. Essentially just functionally speaking, and then, what you substituted and what its capabilities were.
Absolutely. I think prior to us coming on the scene, Sprint had a setup that's very similar to how most enterprise retailers kind of handle, local marketing and local presence. They were working with another vendor that handled, both listings as well as local store pages. But I think the key difference, especially in the context of this campaign, the SEO that we did, is really around those store pages. Whereas, many retailers kind of use the approach of having a single page per store and packing, maybe different content modules or segments onto that single page. What LastMiles approach is to create what we call the digital storefront, where we're actually creating a full local microsite for each location that we then populate with lots of different types of content, such as in-store inventory, offers, people and staff at the location, careers, services available, trying to really bring the retail store up to the same level of sophistication as many of the e-commerce sites. And as a result of that, what we're able to do is create a lot of incremental, visibility for the types of things going on at each location, in search, and also provide hyper relevant, destination pages for other types of marketing, right? The other, I think, big differentiator with our solution is that we call it transaction focused. And what that means is, because we're going down to that product or offer level, we're actually able to connect the consumer journey, from channels like search or local directories, into, okay, here's a device at a store. How do I now get that? Right. And so we connected to different capabilities within Sprint's ecosystem, such as, see the wait time and get online at a store, right? Book an appointment, or reserve in the store, or go to the e-commerce site and buy online for in-store pickup, as well as things like calls and directions. So I think in combination, connecting all of those disparate elements into one kind of, local experience made it a lot easier for the customers to find and buy.
So how did you get the store inventory information integrated into these pages, and also the things like booking and wait times? What was the back end integration challenge there?
Yeah, sure. So as you know, large enterprises like Sprint have all kinds of data syncs inside of their IT infrastructure. They have information about products that are on the shelves, opening hours of the stores, and capabilities that those stores have in terms of appointment booking and things like that. And the key is that when you're working at this kind of scale, I mean, the system that Michael's describing here, that's tens of thousands of landing pages that are automatically spun up, spun down, indexed with Google based on the data that's coming into our systems. Automation is the key there. So each one of these capabilities, we identify and integrate with kind of the data source that indicates whether or not that particular location supports it, carries a particular product or not. And then we represent that on the microsite. So it's almost like visiting the store online when you go there. The capabilities that the store supports are translated directly to the website.
Well, and you guys were really this is a pre-COVID case study, correct? I mean, it's still ongoing, but when you did this integration initially, it was pre-coronavirus, and you really were kind of ahead of your time because now, of course, people want to get as much information as they can ahead of time, including inventory if that's available, before going in or before investing their time going out into the dangerous outside world, et cetera. So what you saw some pretty significant lift after Sprint moved off of the old system onto your system. Can you tell us what that SEO visibility increase looked like, and why did that happen?
100%. So I think, one of the most striking and immediate benefits was, local device level results, right? So now we were starting
So
to
you mean like
rank.
queries for iPhone 11 near me or something like that?
Exactly. Yeah, near me, or some, we come up organically without the modifier in a lot of cases if there was a store nearby, or queries with a modifier, Brooklyn or Seattle or whatever it might be. When people were doing those device, plus local context searches, especially, Sprint was often outranking, even Apple. Right. And what we found is that was the case and held true across their entire retail footprint. And so incrementally, that was coverage that just didn't have before. Right. The other interesting thing that we observed when we started managing listings for them is that having those landing pages with detailed content on the products and offers actually created incremental lift for the listings as well, because Google would feature them in the map pack for all sorts of longer tail queries.
So was there any sort of conflict or issue with Sprint's existing website or existing landing pages? How did that work? You guys are creating these new microsites. How did that integrate or not integrate with Sprint's existing website and existing landing pages?
You want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. So we actually designed the solution to stitch together with their existing vendor and their existing solution. So it was a single unified experience, and that was done through the data integration and automation. We would link over to their standard store finder, feed data back into it so that the linkages would all connect up. So there was actually not very much competition there. This is net new traffic that we're talking about. And the pages themselves were tied into the customer's analytics systems. So Mike was alluding to how each one of these pages is very purpose-driven, right? It's an iPhone, it's in Houston, Texas. Well, that can feed data at a very granular level back into the customer's analytics systems so that they can actually connect those page views with purchase behavior online and offline. One of the philosophies behind these pages is that there's no single customer journey. Sometimes the customer is early in the research process. Other times they are far down the funnel. They want something specific. They want it now. Maybe they want it shipped to them. So these landing pages supported a lot of different call to actions on them. And we actually saw that the conversion rates increased as we added more call to actions, these being buy it online, book an appointment. Some stores even supported a reserve online, pick up in store. And the traffic that you'd see going into these e-commerce funnels or these offline purchase funnels was very high quality, single digit conversion and funnel completion rates versus, tenths of points across the rest of the website.
Yeah.
What was the, Michael, did you want to add something?
No, I'd say, what was also interesting about this was how we were able to holistically look at, conversions on local, right? Because we were tied into these systems, not only were we now watching as traffic flowed from, listings and organic into these pages, but then we were seeing, okay, what percentage of traffic that goes into now the appointment funnel converts, right? Versus the e-commerce funnel versus, we're doing a lot of store visit metrics tracking as well. And so when you kind of stitch together all these different paths to purchase, like Will was talking about, you develop a much more comprehensive picture of how your customers are actually engaging with you online to offline.
Well, so expand upon that a little bit. What did you learn? What did you conclude from all of this? Seeing the holistic consumer journey there.
Yeah, I think, one thing that we'll mention is customers love options, right? We did a bunch of A/B testing and we were actually pretty surprised to see a linear increase as we added more conversion options. People think, okay, you crowd a page, but it actually worked pretty well. Another thing is that, given the high value of mobile devices for this client, customers do quite a bit of research online before they buy. And so we found that going down to that, longer tail query had some of the higher conversion rates all around, because that was the moment when customers were ready to kind of transact and pull the trigger.
Where did you see the concentration of conversions happening? Were people buying online? Were people setting up appointments to go into the store? Were people buying online and picking up in store? How did that? What was the breakdown? If you can speak to that at a high level.
I think that the appointments and get in line were definitely the lion's share of conversions, right? Customers seem to love that functionality, and that only increased when COVID hit, right? But we did see, as time went on, a steady uptick in the e-commerce traffic. That also has to do, I think, with some strategic developments on Sprint's e-commerce site and some improvements they made there. But I think the vast majority was really the appointment booking.
And Will, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think Mike covered it nicely there. I'd like to say that when it comes to online to offline conversion, there's no silver bullet to measuring it. The customers are going to be doing, one of a dozen things, and piecing together all these little points of light of data about what the customer is doing without being overly onerous on tracking, of course, is one of the big challenges there. You need a separate measurement system for your appointment booking versus your e-commerce versus your get in line system. So being able to kind of stitch together that holistic picture is some of the secret sauce there.
Well, it was great that you had so many options, because you could track so many different points of engagement and consumer actions there. So what I want to do now is go to Julie and talk through her case study a bit, and then I'll bring you guys back at the end and we'll have a conversation about some broader issues. So excellent information there. And welcome back, Julie. How are you doing?
Good.
Was that interesting to hear what those guys did? I think it's really interesting stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you had a particular when I read this, I was quite fascinated, because the challenges that you faced with this rental car situation were really dramatic. I mean, you're in the travel vertical. The bottom has fallen out pretty much. There's almost no demand, or the demand is very radically different than it was. So to give us a quick sketch of who the typical customer would have been pre-COVID, and then how you guys pivoted off of that to figure out who your new customer was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So pre-COVID, our ideal target market audience was going to be people over the ages of 30, in a variety of markets across the US. And here things really, really changed. There were a couple of things that stood out. Before I even get there, we were seeing industry trends, slow growing demand in the travel sector, and there was absolutely no volume for a period of time, which is quite frightening. And so one of the key cornerstones in the way that we pivoted during this time was actually relying on data and relying on our product team. We actually have a crew of who I like to call product people here in Horizon, and they're deeply embedded in our performance media team and our efforts. And the reason why they're so important is actually in a lot of instances, we're often in scenarios, more often than not, where we recognize that we absolutely need more firepower when it comes to data integration, when it comes to automation, when it comes to identifying signals where we can anticipate trends before they even happen. It's extremely, extremely crucial, and we want to get there before anyone else does. And so they were extremely critical in identifying which target markets were ripe for the taking, not only from a geolocation standpoint, but also audiences. And then and then also deploying a ton of different types of ad copy as we were scaling our keyword queries to capture, near me, one-way travel types of queries on Google and Bing.
So tell me how you figured out who the target customer was going to be. I mean, talk about that process a little bit, and then the shift away from traditional geos like airports to other places. How did you guys come to those conclusions, audience, and then where to target geographically?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a blend between our client data, but then also our proprietary data internally, where we were identifying, just looking at the demographics, looking at where people were in their different states. We quickly found out that one of the lower priority audiences, under 25, were actually seeing a rise during this time period, and a lot of it was due to them leaving crowded areas or high population areas, so they could go back home. And additionally, one of the ways that we were able to capture them the most effectively was essentially targeting them and also understanding that there's a lot of financial pressure. Targeting them with reduced fees, reduced rates, ad copy, and also waiving fees that we typically have on under 25 aged audience.
So that's, I just want to come back to that for a moment, because it's really fascinating to me, since the typical rental car user is an older person or a person over 30, as you said, often a business traveler, and suddenly you've got this audience under 25, people who don't fit that profile. How did you figure out that those were the people that you wanted to target? How did you figure out that was your audience?
Yeah, we were basically identifying all these different age groups. We were seeing how, as the demand was dropping for specific age groups, which ones were picking back up. So we were watching that in real time, and that was very much with the help of our product and analytics team internally.
And then in terms of the messaging, certainly discounts, I think, are always welcome by consumers. But how did you figure out the ad creative and the messaging here? What describe your process? And then I understand that you made adjustments mid campaign. Talk about that if you could a little bit.
Yeah, so it was two parts. It was understanding what sort of environment we were in. We knew that, one, there's a lot of financial pressure, not only for businesses and households, but for individuals as well. And then also, identifying that there's a lot of concern around health and safety. So those were critical in terms of restoring brand trust, restoring, the brand relationship with some of these customers and people out there who were starting to look for car rentals again. And the other piece of it too. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah.
No, you. Go ahead. No, I'll ask my question after you're finished. Sorry.
The other piece of it too was also being really close-knit and keeping a close eye on all the search queries that were picking back up and making sure we were weaving that into our copy strategy. And the last piece of this, again, has to do with our proprietary technology, where we're able to, essentially, it is a high frequency multivariate testing, and we're able to leverage all these different search queries, all of these different offers, as well as understanding the audience intent, what age group they're in, where they're looking to go, and what kind of rental they're looking to find and reserve. And we're able to run a variety of those and best stitch them as we were mining for new keywords and search queries and adding them to our campaigns. And we were stitching a ton of different ad copy and also deploying them on a regular basis. So, when we think about the methodology or, of the test and learn approach when it comes to marketing, we've actually gone a step further. This was very much a test, observe, add, and pause type of approach that was constantly iterating.
And were you targeting the bottom of the funnel purely, or were you doing anything at the brand level with this campaign? Talk about that if you could.
Yeah, we did both. So we were still maxing out our brand terms, but we were also looking for non-brand search queries, generic search queries, and there was an element of it too where we were identifying, knowing that there were a lot of businesses that were struggling and they weren't able to meet the demands of prospects and their existing customer base. We were also keeping a close eye on that, and then identifying when when some of these competitors were leaving the search market or the search landscape, and there was, and we had the ability, or our client had the ability to essentially fulfill the demand that was untapped and unmet.
So that's a fascinating part of this, and this is one of the things that was talked about a lot during the beginning stages of COVID. As people are pulling back ad budgets, there are opportunities to grab market share. How did you monitor what was going on with your competitors? Because rental cars is one of the most competitive segments in travel, obviously. How did you understand what your competitors were doing, and then is there a particular instance that you can describe where there was a opportunity that opened up that you seized?
Yes, there was. So we were actually leveraging one of our, and to backtrack and kind of provide some context, our internal product and analytics team, they actually have a full suite of products, and that all fulfill like a very specific need. So one of the products that we leveraged specifically for this account had to do with monitoring competition in real time. And so we have a number of reports within that product and the analytics portfolio where we're able to see how much impression share each competitor has at any given time, and if they're trending to actually leave the market entirely. And the other piece of it too, we're also mining for any news articles that were coming out related to our competitors, and then identifying if the business was really, really struggling and they were about to completely leave the arena. And so one example is actually Hertz.
Who is not your client?
That's not my client, no.
Yes.
Yeah, who's not my client, correct. And as they were exiting and reaching, obviously they were exiting the space, we were able to get ahead of that and really start to conquest those search queries and show up and, pull that pool of customer sites.
Did that conquesting make its way into the ad copy in any way?
Yeah, for our ad copy for competitor conquesting, actually, we were pretty surgical about it. So for specific competitors where we identified that our client had the leg up and had a much more, or a better offering rather, compared to specific competitors, we used that in our copy. And in our proprietary technology, we were actually able to automatically serve the ad copy variations that perform best depending on the competitors, but also depending on the audience that we're searching.
Okay, that's excellent. Really fascinating stuff. I want to bring Will and Michael back in, and for our remaining time, I just what's interesting to you guys about what Julie was saying?
I love.
Did anything strike you in particular?
Absolutely. I love the testing approach and the fact that you're constantly testing and iterating and able to do that at what sounds like breakneck speed is really impressive, and in many ways the holy grail for digital.
So, I want to ask you guys as a group, if you've got a sort of direct-to-consumer brand that's purely e-commerce, or you're just online, you're just trying to drive traffic to websites, that's one set of challenges. But if you're dealing with a kind of online to offline scenario, as both of you were, what are some of the unique challenges that those kinds of campaigns, either on an organic basis or paid basis, present themselves? Just jump in.
I'm happy to start. I think, one of the challenges is that, in today's world, customers are conditioned to the ease of e-commerce and Amazon, right? So customers expect, okay, I want it, I know how to get it, I do this, and it's there, right? So I think one of the mantras we have internally is, how do we make it as easy for the customer to buy in store as it is for them to buy online? And as a guiding principle, I think that's been really helpful in shaping our product and philosophy, towards really trying to lower customer friction.
I mean, and Julie, obviously, most rental car reservations now are made online, even though fulfillment is offline.
Yeah, and I think the thing about this, because of the environment that we're in with COVID, one of the aspects that we really leaned into was ensuring that contactless reservation and pickup was available and it was fully safe, and that we were certified when it came to safety and health regulations for some of these offline interactions for customers and prospects.
I want to come back to the topic of attribution a little bit. Will and Mike, you guys talked about that. You had multiple ways to determine success on your landing pages that had 100 ways for customers to engage with Sprint. And Julie, what did you have any attribution challenges? I would assume you didn't really because of the online reservation. Are there any unique attribution issues here, or measurement issues of any kind that you learned some lessons about?
Yeah, for me specifically, with this account, and this is a little bit more broad, but when we think about ROI, that it can sometimes be short-sighted depending on how you're leveraging that data. And especially in this time frame, in this year, there's a lot of demand out there where you kind of have to pivot and you have to look at media measurement in a slightly different way. So when we're just operating off of ROAS bidding strategies, it can only be looking at a short window of time, and you're actually missing out on a lot of new customer prospects that are a little bit more expensive upfront, but have a lot of lifetime value. So one of the tactics that we also kind of switched gears on was bidding towards a TCPA goal, or CPA goal rather, so that we were able, and then backing that into ROI constraints, so that we were able to spend a little bit more upfront and then see the revenue outside of a 30-day look back.
Anything to add, Will or Mike?
I think the other thing that we really learned here is that context is king, right? Playing off field content is king. When a customer is searching for an iPhone in Brooklyn, they want that local context and information. They don't want to just see a generic ad for an iPhone or a generic result for an iPhone. They want to know, okay, where is it nearby? And so we've learned that by playing to the context of a customer search, you can dramatically increase results.
So we've only got a minute or two here, and just kind of as a final question, and we could certainly go on for a long time and explore these entries in a lot more detail. I mean, you guys have done a great job sort of fleshing out what your campaigns were. But was there any sort of takeaways for you from these experiences that you see as advice to marketers, digital marketers who are watching this? Julie, why don't you start from your experience?
Yeah, I think the key takeaways here is really just staying nimble. And so there's a lot of upside to, obviously, you want to be able to pivot, so not being too married to any sort of concept or plan. And again, there's a lot of upside in terms of being granular and stitching together and creating a very, very granular and fine-tuned account. But there's a lot of there are also challenges in terms of scaling it and managing it. So how can we leverage technology to pair that and really scale and drive more growth and efficiency?
And Will and Mike, were there any surprises or things that you learned through this experience or subsequent to the time frame of your entry that you want to convey to the audience?
Sure. I wouldn't say it's a surprise, but our central thesis around kind of putting accurate data in front of the customer and letting them make a decision as kind of central to our product and strategy is super important to us. And that's where we're going to be going in the future as well. Out of Last Mile, you're going to be seeing a lot more combinations of channels outside of just search engine optimization, but leveraging these landing pages in paid campaigns as well and doing more of that full funnel tracking across all of these channels.
Okay, excellent. I wish we had a lot more time to talk about these case studies in more detail, but you guys have given us an excellent overview, and I very much appreciate your time, and congratulations for winning in these very, very competitive categories. So thank you again, and thanks once again to Microsoft for sponsoring the awards.